All right, everybody, welcome back to the wrong end of the snake question and answer overtime period. Jerry Harvey has graciously agreed to spend another 30 minutes with us, and we thank him for that. And as we were doing our, we just got back on here and we all were just like, man, an hour was like, it felt like 2 minutes, So we didn't get to a lot of what people were asking in the Q&A part of the Zoom thing. And by the way, people, if you were watching on YouTube, if you want to get into questions, you got to, subscribe to the Zoom thing, which is all part of our social media. You can sign up for that. So Tater, why don't you start us off with one of those couple of questions they had going on?
First off, let's thank Kevin Glendinning, who's down there at the headquarters today. Let's give him a shout out because he's helped out immensely today. So, and Jerry's set looks great. I see Klang back there, the big JH logo, and the
he's got the whole thing going on.
Look
nice
at that.
little SD7.
Yeah. I want to get into that in a minute, like what you think about Klang, because that must have done an interesting thing.
One of the questions.
All right, go ahead. Sorry,
yeah,
Tater,
no problem. That's one of the questions. And while I'm seeing all that stuff, I'm thinking, what other in-ear monitor companies have Klang and SD7 set up in there and they're doing testing? Just wondering.
Yeah, we have Klang. We have.
Does Digico have an SD7?
Electrosonics, Wizicom. We have all kinds of stuff over here we're playing with.
I'm just wondering what other companies have that, but we'll get into. They can get into that on their own.
We are always talking about how it's funny how partnerships between companies happen, and the actual company may not even have the partner's gear at their company. It's like,
it's crazy. I know.
It's crazy. I know. Anyway, sorry, Tater. Go ahead.
I just like to know that the earpieces I'm wearing, the company that makes them has the gear right there that if we have an issue, they can check it out. I mean, it speaks for itself.
It does.
First of all, I'd like to show two pieces of history here. We talked about the UE5s.
Wow.
Remember that?
Lord.
There it is.
That's a West
my
Top
serial
box
number because it's been worn off, but
oh my Lord.
There's
those are vintage, dude. Do they still work?
They still work. And you remember the old flesh cables?
Oh yeah.
There's a set of UE5s right there. I don't know what year.
Yeah.
Very early.
I don't know if anybody even still has these boxes, but
that box stopped being made in 2000.
Well, there you go. And then here's an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah.
The very first.
Oh my.
I have that as well.
A little overkill on the carbon fiber box.
The very first Jerry Harvey sets of ears came in this carbon fiber box.
Well, you know why they came in that carbon fiber box, right?
No, because the headsets.
Because I failed at aviation miserably, and I had a ton of those things sitting around.
This was the aviation headset box.
Those are the aviation ones. Oh, wow. Yeah, I actually have that box, and I love that box, actually, to carry all kinds of stuff. It's like one of my favorite things.
Yeah, that's a great box. Yeah. Oh, Lord. So you
did a post of all the boxes or something the other day, and I didn't see this one, and I thought, let's bring that out today.
I don't think we have one of those boxes. Yeah, that was 2009.
Wow.
Started music May 31st, 2009. And
I just remember talking in that period. You weren't doing, IEMs yet. You were still doing the aviation because you couldn't. And man, that seemed like the longest wait for me. I was talking to you every month. When's this going to happen?
Was there a court battle behind the scenes like happening with that, or were you just waiting it out?
I had originally had a 5-year non-compete. And part of the, I can't really talk about the settlement and everything, but part of it was I was let out of my non-compete early.
Got it.
There was a lot more drama than that, but I'll just do the PC.
Yeah, perfect. That's all we need. Sorry, I got all excited about this stuff. I've forgotten some of the questions. So I wanted to talk a bit about, we kind of skipped over, you did some other stuff along the way. And you want to talk about any of your time with the conglomeration of Burns, A1, PRG, all that when you were there?
Wow. Yeah, that was spent 18 months at PRG, and like I said, they had bought all these companies. They had let everyone go. They had a huge building in Las Vegas. I was living there, and Roger Gibbons and I walk into the warehouse and there's 16 semis of gear in a big heaping pile in the middle of a concrete floor. They tell us, oh yeah, you've got 3 months to get all the standards down, you know, make them talk to each other. And 3 days later, they're like, oh, Marilyn Manson has to go out. We need a system. We're like, what? So, you know, and so I spent the next 18 months learning about a sound company and learning how to quote an audio tour. And I had no idea on how to give a proposal or a bid. I mean, I was the most god-awful audio salesman on the planet. And then, you know, then there's like MLs out there. I'm like I'm going to compete with ML, really. Give me a break, right? So I did my best to help them retain some clients. But one of the good things for the in-ear company was I had a whole warehouse full of equipment. I had crossovers, I had analyzers, I had everything you could think of. So, you know, I would get through with, you know, staffing the tours, and after hours, I'd grab a 6-pack and I'd go up into the tech shop and I would experiment with all the gear and with the wireless systems and the crossovers. Years ago, I'd set up, you know, basically multiple active crossovers, and so I could figure out the slopes that I wanted of the crossover networks, and I get, you know, do my capacitors, resistors, and inductors and try to match the slope. And, you know, so it was that was in 99, I think, to 2000. And it was right before the divorce from Westone. And so I did a lot of that R&D. And then when I opened the lab, I think in 2000, and that's when I, you know, started, then I had my own shop, you know, I could build it from start to finish. So yeah, so that's how PRG kind of happened. And then when I left Westone as my lab, I had to give my notice at PRG. And then I opened the first Ultimate Ears lab in 2000 in Las Vegas.
Awesome.
Prior to Irvine, yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I know that your generic business has kind of pulled you into this audiophile world. And so I want to know, outside of the pro audio business, if you had any opinions on what file formats you like the best for digital audio, and also what, if I just wanted to listen to the best sounding something on, you know, my JH ears, what's the best machine in audiophile land to listen to stuff on?
Estelle Kern still makes a very good player. Sony makes a very good player. The files, the best files, the DSD file, it's a Sony format, which sounds, if you listen to even a 192K file, then you listen to that DSD, it's large. I mean, it sounds like it's great. I mean, there's some old Elvis recordings, and you can hear the freaking echo, the reverb chamber. You can actually feel like you're sitting down in that room with a mic and a speaker, you know what I mean? So it gets really deep in texture. So yeah, it's hard to find those. You can get them on, you know, some of the hi-fi, high resolution sites, but yeah, anything DSD you're going to love. Other than that, I listen to between 96K on the bottom end, and then I listen to 192K, right? So, and then, you know, if you go down to 44.1, you just want to be 24-bit, you know, so you can find almost anything out there on these high resolution sites now.
Yeah, there's a lot of argument in the recording part of our industry, 48K versus 96, you know, and the advantages and the oversampling and the, you know, I mean, there's all kinds of guys that will argue with you about, you know, 96K being better than 48K, et cetera, you know. So I was just interested in your opinion about any of that stuff.
Well, if you sit down with a good set of cans or a good set of high resolution earpieces, or good set of, you know, headphones, and you go from 44.1 to 96 to 198 to DSD, you will hear it ramp up.
Yes.
Yeah, you will. So it's just basically listen to the files, and it's just the separation and the detail and the depth of the mix just keeps getting better. You know,
I think in our industry, it's always about latency, right? So if you have plugins, you know, associated with a Digico, there's an argument to be made that 48K keeps all that latency down, and it's still like, can you really hear the difference with the bit differences and, you know, all of those kind of things. So it's an interesting conversation that people are having.
But what's funny is that In my DSP at 96K, the latency is actually longer than at 192. So I
Wow.
believe that the latency gets shorter as you increase the resolution.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes more horsepower, right? I mean, like the
Right.
filters and stuff have to work harder. But you know, the audiophiles, they have no reference. They don't have a snare drum or anything to zero is if it's 30 milliseconds of latency, they hear it at zero, right? Because there's there's no reference, right? It's coming just straight out of the player. But it's different when you're trying to play drums to it, right?
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
But I know there's an argument, going on right now, like with Digico, how their analog converter is 192, right? And then it down samples to 96. And there's an argument going on between Digico and Waves in that down sampling, like if it changes 48K versus 96K. So it's an interesting battle that's going on right now. But I absolutely agree with you. Just listening to a stereo thing at home, you go from 44.1 to 192, and I haven't heard any DSD. Actually, I'm going to go check it out now. But I know 44.1 to 192, two completely different worlds.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
And maybe Pooch derived this from the question. And the question was, what is the biggest difference between a head-fi customer, an audiophile customer, and a musician customer?
For you.
Yeah.
Well, the good thing is they're looking for some of the same things: phase correct, wide frequency response, some dynamic range, headroom. The musician needs more headroom and more dynamic range than an audiophile does, because a live mix, as you know, is nice, all pretty and packaged and compressed and mastered, right? Snare drums coming in and out of the mix. So the performer also needs to be sweat proof. So there's the physical things that the performer needs, and the audio things that the performer needs. And an audiophile just wants it as clear, as neutral as possible, so they're getting straight through plumbing, right? So that's why I try to make things very accurate. I will do like a low pass in some of the high frequencies to kind of make it not sound hyped, right? But audiophiles just want it to be as pure as possible, and they're not looking for as much bottom end. Most audiophiles like it pretty flat, right? And then for a drummer, they might want a little bit more kick. So, that's why we do the adjustable bass. So you can set it down or set it up, whatever works the best for you. And go ahead.
While you're talking about the adjustable bass real quick, I didn't want to interrupt. What is the nominal setting? A lot of people ask, where does Jerry set that originally?
Depends on what model.
There you go. Good answer.
A Layla, wide open. An Angie, wide open. A 13, 2 o'clock. A Roxanne, 2 o'clock. Right? So they're different bass outputs. So the 13 and the 16 I would set it at 2 o'clock as well. So that's about 6 dB of attenuation from wide open, right? But the Jimmy, wide open. I try to tune things that sound the best when the attenuator is open, the bass is all the way up. But there's some of them, like the Roxanne and the 13 and 16, just have too much bottom, But what we can do, like if somebody does, a lot of times if somebody wants a 2-pin, like a small ear, I have them set the bass attenuator and I measure the impedance of it, the resistance of it. Then I put that circuit in on the low end driver. So a lot of times, 20 to 40 ohms will pretty much set the bottom end wherever everybody wants it.
I'd like to go on record while we're talking about all the models. Is the 13 to me is a very unsung earpiece. I don't think it gets enough recognition. May get a little lost in there. I think it doesn't get enough recognition. I think it's one of the better pieces, in my opinion.
The 13 should have been the 12, right? Because the earpiece at Ultimate Ears was the 11. And then when I started JH Audio, I go, I think I'm going to go with the lucky 13. And it actually, it was good, Yeah. The audiophiles bit off on the 13 right away. I went to May 31st, 2009. I went to a Head-Fi in LA, took my little table with a little set of foam tips, and it went from losing $1 million in cash on the aviation headset to being profitable within 5 days. Wow. I remember coming back from Los Angeles at the Marriott there at the airport, And Jude from Head-Fi said, Jerry Harvey's back, and described who I was. And all these Head-Fi people started blogging about how great the 13 was. I remember going to the mailbox, and we were making maybe 5 aviation headsets a week. I mean, we were dying a dismal death,
Wow.
right? And I go, and all of a sudden, I've got this box of 250 pair of impressions of all over the world. I was like, and I had like 3 lab guys. I remember dumping them out on the table going, uh-oh, I think we got a little problem on our hands. I don't know how we're going to make all this shit, you know?
Good
I guess we're going to do a little overtime.
Yeah. Let's hire some people.
Man, that's crazy. Was there, we talked a little bit about your mentors and you mentioned it kind of in the last one, but was there anyone that was like super influential in your life? It doesn't have to be someone in this industry. Like, was there one person that you would be like, that person taught me the most to become the person that I am?
There was a guy in St. Louis. There was 2 guys. Jim Egan was a club mixer that kind of taught me the ropes. But there was this guy, his name was Ed Bigger, Fast Ed Bigger. He actually worked for Soundcraft Consoles later on, but Ed was he was out in Armadillo Sound days. He was with Ted Nugent. And so he was like the big guy in St. Louis, and he was cool. He had like a long ponytail, and
right.
so I'm like 17 years old, and I was mixing a band called The Agents because I was teaching this guy, Roger Moore. Yeah, let's take Roger Moore and The Agents, right?
Yeah.
Karate, right? And he was like 30.
Awesome.
He was antique. He couldn't even touch his toes. I was like, dude, you're too old. You're never going to get flexible. You're 30, But anyway, so I started being his roadie because I was 17 years old. I'm like, yeah, I get into bars. My mom signed off, said it was okay. So we would play this place every Wednesday called the Lucky Dog Saloon. And there was a bartender. Her name was Nadine. I'll never forget this. And Fast Eddie liked Nadine, and he would come in there. He's trying to date her. Unfortunately, there was this young 17-year-old sound guy that was torturing me. That's why I was joking with Kevin, red means stop, because that's the first thing he told me. Hey, buddy, red means stop, and everything's red. Let's turn this down, Yeah. So, over, a few months, Ed Bigger taught me gain structure, equalization. Hey, you hear that in that PA right here on this 31? That's what you're hearing. And then, boost it. If you can't hear it, boost it. It'll come out and pull it down. So he gave me the basics to, he taught me basic sound mixing, gain structure, equalization, awesome. How a compressor work, how a gate works. He actually took the time. So of all the people, there's been people that have taught me more elaborate things, the Gungies and the Greg Prices and the Dave Lawlers that have, took me to another level. But, I'll forever thank Ed Bigger for wanting to date Nadine and teaching me some sound shots.
Influential for you. I mean, I always tell people that now at our age, it's our turn, right? Like I want to be that guy for somebody, and I always, I think about that a lot, like a 5-minute period of me being with a young kid may change that kid's direction forever. And, so words are important. And so, treat people with respect and try to help, younger kids learn. So anyway, Tater, you got anything else?
Yeah. We don't normally, when we started this podcast, we didn't like to talk about it, but it's part of life now. COVID, JH Audio, how's it going?
Well, if it wasn't for my audio files, we'd basically be out of business right now because, just like our touring buddies, everything's the switch flipped and there's professional musicians,
Yeah.
So we're doing pretty good. I mean, like I said, as far as the company concerned, like I said, we started milling, making very pretty things for the audio files, carbon fiber, copper, titanium, you name it. We're doing everything we can to make something that's shiny that people want and, they want to buy. Invested in a lot of CNC machines, some crazy machines that can laser these details. I mean, we've invested heavily. We've gone from, 60 people, we were down to 8. Now we're back up to about 20.
Fantastic.
We keep in all of our infrastructure. We still have the center staging office. We have Nashville and Soundcheck, and we still have the office in Manhattan at Smash Studios. So we're maintaining all of that. you know, I'm in a 8,000 square foot building that seems like it's, it's larger than it needs to be, but
Right.
we have to keep this.
I think the switch
infrastructure.
is going to turn back on, right? So you can't walk away from that. You have to wait, and when the switch comes back on, it's going to be.
You have to be ready. Yeah.
You have to be
There'll
ready.
be a lot of rush orders, let me tell you.
Oh man,
That's what we're ready for. And
I'm wondering if all those people have stored their ears properly. They got them in dehumidifiers and stuff. They're going to get back, and that stuff's not going to be what it once was.
We have seen a bunch of repairs start coming in recently, so people are thinking about it. Sean Menendez put some orders in.
That's a good.
There's some.
Yeah.
We're starting to feel a little bit of the pros come back. I mean, nothing like before. Like I said, we're like 90% audiophile now. Before we were 20% audiophile. So that kind of tells you we've taken a 75-80% hit to the business, and we're doing just like everybody else. If you're a sound engineer or a sound company, we're just battening down the hatches and trying to get through the other side of this thing, you know?
Yeah. So
can you imagine if you were part of some sort of conglomerate that happens after this? Like, sound companies are going to go away. It's just a fact of the business. They're going to get sold. But you know how we talked about earlier on, can you imagine where guys are just going to show up to a sound company and there's going to be 13 different connectors? Like,
it's going to be PRG all over again.
It is.
PRG Burns Audio, A1, yeah. Electrotech.
Yeah.
It's going to be
all in a big pile, a big
All in a
steamy
big
pile.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, so it would be good if these people out there who know they're going to have, 20 sets of ears for a band or more, or even less, doesn't matter really. While you're not super busy, get those things in and get them checked. If they're just left over from the last tour sitting there, get that stuff in and get it checked and get it.
Now's the time.
Now's the time, because you're going to be slammed. We all know it. So I have another question. It's kind of the evolution of the cable. Can you take us through the evolution of the cable from the 2-pin up to where it is today? Because I know you've just had an upgrade, and what's gone on with that, and maybe some I'm adding this in, maybe some tribulations that you had where the cables, you thought it was going to be one thing and turned out to be another, and you had to switch and all that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, cables are my nemesis. They're Jesus. I mean, the cable companies over the years have almost put me out of business a couple times, right? Because they don't really know that John Bon Jovi is going to walk out with a brand new set of earpieces and the cable's going to fail and everything's going to go into the toilet from that point on, right? So, and they don't care because to them it's a piece of wire. But in the early days, and it's still being used, the 2-pin connector, is what the Future Sonics and everybody used. Marty found that back in the day. That was originally designed, I think, in the late 40s or the 50s for cochlear implants. So Plastic Swan out of Roanoke, Virginia, they've been making that cable forever, right? So it became the industry standard, and we still use it. Now at Ultimate Ears, for a while, I went to a recessed socket, and that seemed to work pretty good because the 2 pins seemed to wear out.
Yeah.
But when I wanted to switch to attenuating the bass, I needed more than 2 connectors, right? I needed 3. Well, I needed high, low, and ground, but I basically wanted 4-pin because I knew at some point I was going to be actively controlling this stuff. I just didn't think it was going to take me so long to get close to it, right? So then I remember on the 12 VH tour looking down at a whirlwind connector. We called them, remember when they called them size mates and socket, remember that?
Yeah, size mate, yeah.
You know why that was because they used them for seismograph stuff, and they made that connector so for earthquakes,
I know
right?
that.
Yeah.
Wow, I just learned something today. That's awesome.
So anyway, I just remember hooking up one of the racks, and I was like, I need 4 conductors, and so then I kind of sketched out on a cocktail napkin, and it took a while to get it, but that's what ended up that 4-pin connector. It was a good enough design. I mean, we've got tens of thousands of them out there, and it had some flaws. It's been redesigned a few times. So, what we ended up doing, now we've got Klang that wants to put the sensors in the ear. You have, and that was 4 conductors. So then you also have the infrared lighting tracking, right? Because for Ariana Grande and for Roger Waters, we had to put the trackers in the earpieces, right? Then you have, for like Pink and Keith Urban, I want to make a headset that you need the extra 3 conductors. So now we need 7, right?
Got it.
So we had a German company design a 7-pin sweat-proof connector. And this thing is super robust. It's still, for the audio, we're still using 4 pins, but we have the option to go up to 7 pins for whether it's the sensors, or we need to do a microphone, because the Pink setup, what they basically were doing is they had a set of earpieces, but you had to plug the microphone into the faceplate of the earpiece, right? This connector, this 7-pin connector, is so easy to get on. What we'll do now is just have her pop an earpiece off and slap an earpiece on, because you can't mess it up. You just twist it and you pop it in, and it has retention. It's totally sweat proof. So we've moved everything over to the 7-pin connector. I think we're going to do the 11 with the old 4-pin, but anything now that goes out of the lab, it has this new 7-pin sweat proof, very robust aluminum. I mean, this thing's a bulletproof, and it's a little bit smaller than the old 4-pin connector.
Ah,
Wow.
Yeah. So we're the only company that has done that. And we're always forward thinking about what's coming in the future. Right. So that's why we have 7 instead of 4.
yeah.
What I find interesting about people like yourself is, for instance, for myself, if I come up with an idea, I'm like, oh, that's a pretty good idea. But it's the implementation part of that I screw up. Like, I wouldn't know who to call to figure out for a 7-pin connector. Do you know what I mean? So how does that happen? Like, what do you do? Do you call people around and say, well, I have this idea. It needs to be 7 pins inside this thing. Is there, hello, 1-800-CHINA, or like, how does that happen?
It's just being in traffic, right? It's like, if you need something in your industry, you know who to call, right? As you are manufacturing over the years, you just get relationships and contacts, and you know who to call when you need that, and then you make contacts at trade shows, like the connector company, my guy Sean, I think met the German connector company at a trade show.
Right.
And then they said, can you do this? Yeah. So it's like, it's just being in traffic, and then you can always Google search whatever you're looking for,
That's
and
true.
if you got a
These
successful
days.
enough, yeah, but still, even then, you basically just being in traffic, as I call it, doing business day to day, and people approach you sometimes. Sometimes it's somebody comes to you with an idea. It's a two-way street.
I think it's important that we point out that, because I get lost in that, and I have to push myself to do that, to be like, okay, I'm at this trade show. I'm going to walk over to this dude's booth that's tiny, that doesn't look like he's got anything going on, but wow, he's got a little something happening. That's interesting. Let's strike up a relationship. So anyway, it's interesting stuff.
I think a good question, maybe even the question to end on here I have, is what industry have you sold, let's just say more than one set of ears, multiple sets of ears that you thought you'd never sell to? Like they used your set of ears for something you thought, why do these guys need my ears? One of those industries like you never thought would come about.
Wow.
I always think of that because of the chain motor. Like nobody, all of a sudden CM one gear goes, our sales are up by 10,000 motors. What happened? Oh, a new industry's flying.
Yeah.
Now they're using our motor. You know what I mean? It's like, great.
Yeah. Well, we really, it's all people you would think that would use them, like race teams. We've had race teams use them, and Kevin's working on a big restaurant up in Chicago. They're doing it, for security. So
wow.
There's not really, I really wish there was something that I could tell you that was out of the box, but it's pretty narrow box. I mean,
no astronauts or
no,
anything like that. No,
I think Michael actually does the astronauts. I think Sensophonics does the astronauts.
Okay.
That's his deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, Westone does did a lot of the hearing protection and stuff for the fighter pilots, so they had that little niche. So there are other niches out there, but, I've always just honed in on the music.
Yeah.
Stick with what you're good at.
Yeah, I hear you. We got to figure out
somebody could argue that point with me, but I think I'm okay.
No, I think you're smart to, stay in your own lane in some ways,
Yeah.
But Anyway, Tater, you got anything else? I think we kind of run out of time here as well.
We're at the meters running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jerry, thank you so much, man. We really appreciate you, giving of your time. And I think that if I were, what I love about, our thing, Wrong End of the Snake, is talking with people like you. And I think there's going to be some kid that watches this thing and gets, a fire bug in his ass to go do something.
I hope so.
So,
it's all about the new generation, man.
That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah. We're at the end of our snake almost.
Yes, we are definitely at the end.
At least I'm a senior. I'm 60 years old in January, right?
I'm close behind.
all the bands we're working for are old, and we are old.
Yeah,
and,
I remember working for Tasco, and there were they had their lighting too, right? And there was like some old grumpy English guys. I just remember going, I ain't never want to be that guy, right? You know what? I'm that guy. Yeah. I'm just not grumpy.
No, I mean, that's true, but yeah, we are that guy in the back lounge who's telling stories. But
well, I love you guys. Thanks for having me on. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Thanks very much. All right. Well, hopefully we get to see you in person sometime soon.
I hope so, man. Let's get out there and do some shows. I'm ready to mix too. So
yeah, for real. I know.
Need some old geriatric audio guy. I'm available.
Me too.
Take care, guys. I'll talk to you soon.
Cool,
Thanks,
man.
Jerry.
See you.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Everyone, hi.